back by popular demand, an all questions episode, next on Talking Cars. Hi, and welcome to another episode of Talking Cars. I'm Mike Quincy.
I'm John Lincove.
And I'm Mike Monticello.
So happy holidays, happy July 4th. We're really pleased that you're spending some of your time off with us, and we've decided to devote an entire episode to a very special Talking Cars. Why is it special?
Because we're on it.
Well, we've got an orange shirt, and we've got Mike and John here, which is awesome, but we are going to spend this entire episode just answering your questions. And man, do we have some doozies. I'm going to start kicking it off here and some information that people want on the never-ending quest for SUVs. Specifically, the question reads, question for the team. I live in a neighborhood where parking is super limited. I'm tall, so I'm down to the Hyundai Kona or Nissan Kicks as a small SUV. Any thoughts on which would be better for city driving in the Northeast? Anybody want to jump in? Kona, Kicks?
Okay, well, I'll say that the Kicks is designed as a vehicle that's a little more as a replacement for a Nissan Sentra driver, according to Nissan. Talking to them when the car was unveiled, it's front-wheel drive only, so it's for someone who just wants to sit a little higher, but still wants the driving experience, the low weight, probably the slightly better fuel economy, and the economical experience of a Nissan Sentra. So if you're looking for Northeast living, which involves snow, that may not be the best vehicle unless you're willing to invest in snow tires, depending on where you live. You live in Vermont, probably not great with all seasons.
Right.
You live in Southern Connecticut, you could probably get around. So keep that in mind.
So I mean, Mike, this is like another example of car companies saying, we're not so much thinking about sedans, we want to sell more SUVs.
Yeah, I mean, everyone seems to want SUVs, and of course, this is the replacement for the pretty funky looking Juke. Mm-hmm. This thing isn't quite as wackily styled.
A little more usable, it seems.
Yeah, but the question about city living in the Northeast immediately struck me the fact that it's not available with all-wheel drive. That's might I would say point the person toward the Kona, because you can get the Kona in all-wheel drive. That's the version we tested was all-wheel drive, and the Kona's a pretty good little car actually. It handles pretty well. It doesn't have a whole lot of power, as most vehicles in this class don't, this subcompact SUV class. But the Kicks, keep in mind, we haven't driven it yet. Right, so it's, we will buy one and we will test it. But when you're talking about underpowered, the Kona, the 2-liter 4-cylinder has 147 horsepower. The Kicks is only going to have 125 horsepower.
Right.
So it's going to have even less power, but again, it might have pretty good fuel economy. We'll see.
The engine could be torquier, just in how it delivers it. So
yeah, but the city driving, maybe there's not so much need for heavy duty merging.
Exactly. So that may not be a big deal. Something that struck out about for me with the Kicks is that it comes with rear drum brakes as opposed to disc brakes, like pretty much every other car in the world right now. Right. And again, probably not a huge deal for someone in the city. Shouldn't be actually a big deal at all. Now, if you get outside the city and you go up a mountain and then are coming back down a mountain, that's when you might notice some difference. Drum brakes don't work as well when they get heated up as disc brakes. Sure. It looks funny on the vehicle when you look at the rear of the car. What's wrong with the brakes?
And when I saw the Kicks and read about it, it kind of reminded me of our Toyota CHR. I mean, this is another kind of, it's sort of a car, but it's sort of an SUV, but it's not all-wheel drive, and it's kind of funky looking, and I know that in our evaluations, we weren't too impressed with the CHR, but anyway, that being said, yet another question on SUVs. It seems like they're never ending. Let's switch gears a little bit, literally and figuratively, to a really interesting question that we got about a fun-to-drive car with a manual transmission. Mike?
Am I reading this one?
Take it away.
So this question, in the next year, I'll be graduating college. I'm a car enthusiast and want something fun to drive, reliable, has a manual transmission, and is under $50,000. I currently drive a 2017 Hyundai Elantra, but I'm ready to move up. There's a whole lot going on here. First of all, I love the fact that this person wants a manual transmission, wants a car that's fun to drive. So those points stood out for me. But so what do you guys got? I know what I would suggest, but what do you suggest, John?
Like you said, there's a whole thing about saving manuals, but there are a lot of cars still available with one. One that stands out, fun to drive. It's been I think that the reliability is going to come with its second year. Subaru WRX will be really fun, available with a manual. The first year had a little teething problems when it was brand new. You have to wait a bit for our survey results to come out this fall, but that's a potential one. You could get a BMW 2 Series. You can get something.
That was my pick.
A couple of the Germans.
My pick was a BMW M240i. Which is just under $50,000, 6-speed manual, 3-liter twin-turbo inline 6-cylinder, so that's sweet, BMW inline 6, 335 horsepower, great handling, great seats, right. A really precise shifter, rear-wheel drive. I think you can't go wrong with that car. And if you're gonna, if you can spend $50,000, I say blow the whole thing on the car as soon as you get out of college. That's what I'm saying.
Well, hopefully maybe he's living with mom and dad. I did that. I graduated college and was able to get a brand new Audi A4 back in, because I'm old, back in '96.
The person's in college right now and has a 2017 Hyundai Elantra. So
which isn't a horrible car.
It's not like they're driving an old car.
Cheap, yeah.
It's interesting. I love this question. It always seems like whenever we're on, we get at least one manual transmission question, which is like, yes. But I had a couple cars that you guys already mentioned. I went a little bit less expensive. I was thinking about the 4-cylinder Honda Accord Sport, which is a really nice car, fun to drive, good fuel economy. The Honda Civic Si, which we've talked about a number of times on this show. Another one, a couple that if you go light on options, you could get an Audi A4 Premium or a BMW 320i if you're looking for 4 doors with a manual transmission. But again, don't go crazy putting lots of options on it. I was kind of pleased to see that you could get into one of these, that they still offer manuals. A couple other ones that are a little crazy, the Ford Mustang GT, hello, and the Subaru BRZ and Toyota 86.
I think you can't go wrong with those. They just don't have a ton of power, but the handling is awesome.
Right.
You know what I was looking at when I graduated from college? I didn't have $50,000 to spend.
Oh no!
Was it a horse?
No,
it was another bicycle.
No. I was looking at a used Ford Mustang SVO and a used second-gen Toyota Supra.
Awesome.
And I ended up going with the Supra.
Awesome. Wow. Yeah. We love those. Okay, so that we could have spent the whole time on this one, but we're going to move on to the next question. This is about seats. John, if you could do us the honors.
Sure. Hi, CR. Can you give some insight into how you rate seat comfort? I know that you can factor in objective data like the amount of available adjustments and physical dimensions, but how do you come up with the overall score? And I think what's great here is that we have actually one of our people who tests and evaluates seats, Mike here. So
he's always sitting down at the job.
Yes,
good one, Quinn.
Even when he's not testing seats.
And my review's coming up, unfortunately.
Yes, it is.
So the short answer is that it's a jury of people that score the seats on every test car, and it's usually around about 7 people do the actual scoring. I'm one of those people that does the scoring, and our body types range from short to medium to what do we call it? Tall, or
something that you and I can't talk about.
Or perfectly sized for Formula One is what I call myself.
There you go. Cockpit ready.
But so what we're doing is, it's interesting because some of our testers, really like a lot of lower back support. Other testers prefer a wide, generous seat. So it really runs the gamut of body types, of what they want in a seat. So, and we combine all those scores, we average them, and that comes up with the seat score. So it's not just one person's opinion. It's many people. And of course, then we also look at the logbook when Ryan Pizlkowski actually writes the section of the tech report on seat comfort, and he looks at the logbook, sees what other people said about the seats as well, and all of that stuff is factored in, and that's how we come up with the seat score.
And it's men and women too.
Men and women.
So it's unlike a lot of other media where like one person's assigned a car or they get a press car and it's the great seat or whatever. Like you said, we have a whole variety of people. Contributing to it.
But the truth is that regardless of what we think, anyone out there watching us right now, don't just take our words for it. I mean, everybody's body is different. You're going to fit in the seats differently. So you certainly need to try them on before you just say, well, Consumer Reports says this seat is great, so I don't even have to try it.
Right. You got to go sit in that car at the dealership for sure.
Because it does affect. I mean, everybody here, like you said, has a complaint. There's seats I'm really unhappy with. I mean, I just got out of the Avalon this morning, and I'm not a fan. I'm not a fan of how you can't pan down the front of the cushion, the front of the bottom cushion, and to get a comfortable seating position for me, I'm almost up into the header.
Right.
You know, I think the Lincoln Continental and a lot of Lincolns are another example of seats that just didn't work for people.
Right. I think with a Lincoln, it was kind of unanimously disliked by the staff. But I know you've gotten into some Mazdas that I think the CX-9 was one, and maybe some others where because their front of the bottom cushion doesn't tilt up and down. It just didn't suit you at all. When you brought it back from the dealer, you're like, well, this car doesn't work for me. And I got in it, and it just happened to suit me fine. The way the position was of the lower cushion was fine for me, but it's not going to be fine for everybody.
Right, and it got us thinking about some really particularly good seats or bad seats. And I was going through a quick mental list. I already mentioned the Audi A4. That was one of the cars that I particularly liked the seats and I fit in well. The Volvo S60, I thought the seats were really good. Some of the ones that were really horrible, you mentioned the CX-9, which I really didn't like. The Recaro seats that we tested in the Ford Focus ST and the Fiesta ST were a bit crazy getting in and out of. But you guys got particular favorites, likes or dislikes?
Well, the Recaros, they're a super aggressive seat, and there's some that they run in the Cadillacs as well. And I think that a lot of it is just there's a lot of things that are their positioning, safety, because the seat can't eject you into the header, for the Federal Motor Vehicle Standard. It has to send you into the windshield if you're unrestrained, so you can exit the vehicle. So there's a lot of things that go into the seat positioning. Right. I agree with the fact that, again, I don't like this. A vertical. I like to have it down.
You mean you're talking about the bottom cushion?
The bottom.
And I think that's the problem with those Recaros
exactly.
In the Ford Focus ST and RS.
They're just uncompromising.
It's uncompromising. When I think of bad seats, I think of the Chevrolet Bolt. I really don't like those seats at all. Was disappointed with the seats in the BMW X1. They put different seats in the X2, so those seats worked much better. You know what? The seats I really liked recently was the Honda Civic Type R. It has these crazy bolstered seats. It's a little hard to get in and out of, but once you're in, they're super comfortable, yet super, great support all around you. And they have this kind of like suede material, so it holds you in place really well and it's comfortable. I was surprising that a seat that aggressive could also be that comfortable.
One thing to jump in, I mentioned the Lincolns. I think what's horrible is that with the Lincoln seats is that they're less comfortable in the Navigator than the seats in the Ford Expedition, which seem to be a little more F-150 type. They're broad enough, but they're bolstered well, but they have a lot of adjustments. The Lincoln, an $80,000 SUV, has the base seat that has only limited adjustments. Then even the Continental that we tested, we had an up-level seat package, and they still weren't comfortable for many people. So that's why, like you said, try.
Right.
Yes.
And everyone has different opinions on seats. We could talk about this for hours. But it's such a critical part of your buying decision. Okay, moving on to the next, yet another question on SUVs, specifically some smaller models with a third row seat. Hello, Talking Cars. Why have all the compact SUVs shed the third row option? Is it a really dramatic increase in price or packaging difficulty? I'd like to get my family into a larger, more capable vehicle, but I'm not ready to commit to the mid-sized SUV class. John, you have some advice for this person.
I find it interesting because I think there's actually a greater number of small SUVs, compact SUVs in our rating system that do have the seat. So you have a Tiguan. The Volkswagen Tiguan has it available with both all-wheel drive and front-wheel drive. You could get it in the
Nissan Rogue.
My goodness, Nissan Rogue. Thank you very much.
That's what I'm here for.
Mike Monticello for the
blanked
save.
on me. And one of the Mitsubishi Outlanders. And the problem is that they're very small. They're jump seats, basically. They're very limited use. They also add weight. They add a bit of complexity. The weight is going to hurt fuel economy. It's also going to hurt packaging. So, they fit it in with all-wheel drive systems, because these are all primarily front-wheel drive based vehicles. So can they fit that in so that it actually fits the person, restrains them properly, gives them enough foot room? And it's a big compromise. It used to be just really the Toyota RAV4 for a long while, and that was optional and very hard to get. So if you go into it looking at that perspective and that it's a jump seat, those are some options there. You don't want to move up to a Kia Sorento, which has a standard third row now. You don't want to get even bigger, like a Toyota Highlander. Totally understand. These are kind of your options, and those are the reasons you're not seeing them.
And I think if the manufacturers listen to what the customers are telling them, and if the customers are telling them, if so many customers are coming and saying, why doesn't this compact SUV have a third row? then they would put more third rows in. But clearly people, if they get one with a third row, they use it every once in a great while, and then they probably realize, I don't even need this.
Well, interesting because Toyota dropped the third row seat in the 2013 redesign of the RAV4. So, I mean, Toyota doesn't do things, foolishly or offhand. So.
Well, yeah, obviously, they put more investing in space for a hybrid powertrain than they wanted for third row. And, sometimes it's artificial take rates. Well, it's only available on the base model, and we don't really sell a lot of base models, but we didn't sell a lot of seats. It's chicken and egg in that respect.
Right. Sure. Thanks for that question. Please keep them coming. Send us everything to TalkingCars@iCloud.com. That's TalkingCars@iCloud.com. Your videos, your text, all these questions are awesome. And that's going to bring us to our next one. And this is from a previous episode of Talking Cars. We had a lot of comments about the Hyundai Veloster. The comment is, and it's really not a question as much as a comment. While you were discussing the Veloster, I heard calls for more speed and a louder exhaust, but you never mentioned the forthcoming Volster N. It provides both, as well as improved handling and driving dynamics. Fair point.
It's a fair point.
Really talk about the N, but we haven't driven the N.
True. And I would also say that when you look at the one that we rented, the Veloster, the new Veloster Turbo, it's a pretty aggressive looking car. And so, when you get into it, you're thinking it's going to be a certain way. And I actually thought the power was pretty good. But I do agree, the engine didn't sound like much, and I would have preferred, some exhaust crackle. And admittedly, like Hyundai said, that's going to be coming. They said this Veloster N is going to sound really good, have this great exhaust note. But why shouldn't you have it on the Veloster Turbo as well? I mean,
Right. It's not like you're asking the base model to sound like a race car. The SI, the Civic Si, Honda Civic Si has a bit of a burble.
Right.
You don't have to go all the way up to the Honda Civic Type R. You don't have to go on the BMW X3. You don't have to go all the way up to the M40i. You can get a little bit of sportiness on the regular X3. So that's, I think, what we were looking for is gradual steps, and it didn't really feel any different from a base engine. There wasn't a bit of a throatiness.
Right.
You shouldn't have to go to a Type N, Type R, AMG,
take some
S4,
letter of the alphabet and put it at the end.
to get a bit of a sportiness, especially when there's a sport button, and there's a sport mode.
Right? Yeah, I immediately put it into sport mode, and I was thinking, oh, this is going to sound really good, and it sounded okay.
It's okay,
but, just not. I agree. I don't. It could be a little bit better.
It was a fair comment. Good on you to point it out. And you're right. But we'll have some information when we get some time with the N, because it's probably going to be pretty entertaining.
Yeah.
And that will take us to our next comment. And I wrote comment in my notes in air quotes here. The comment is about how long it should take for people to learn the car's controls and other nuances. And Mike, could you please take it away?
Sure. This person says, I hate it when auto journalists who drive 100 different cars a year complain about the learning curve of each new car. It's a problem specific to your job and not one that consumers care about. Now, John, I assume this person is talking about both shifter issues that we have and, more importantly, infotainment systems. Infotainment systems, when we say something's unintuitive, that's what they're...
I'm guessing it's probably also a recent question from the Acura RDX, which we just took delivery of, and it has a convoluted touchpad system for the infotainment system. This isn't a matter of I couldn't find the headlight switch, so it's awful. It's not a matter of I really wish they pushed the seat controls somewhere else because they're on the door and they should be down here. We're looking at it as across the whole spectrum of what works and what doesn't work. And over time, things evolve. Touch screens. We at times we weren't a big fan of touch screens because we would rather just have the physical controls. They were confusing. And some of the early touch screens that a lot of other journalists and people came out and said, "Oh, it's so great! Oh my God, my Ford Touch is fantastic!" And it's the same type of thing with other cars. The Ford Taurus is fantastic when it came out, and my Ford Touch, blah blah. A couple months or even a year later, like, oh well, the trunk's small and it's a big car with no space. People jump on it in reviews and they love it, and they love it because it's new.
Think about all the evolutions the BMW's iDrive infotainment system has gone through from the beginning. When it first came out, it was terrible.
It was terrible.
It was terrible, and it's taken a long time to get it to the point that now it's actually, it actually works pretty well.
Right.
But
it doesn't
was
require
not,
that curve.
It was not great from the beginning, and so, but the real thing here is, the reason why we talk about these infotainment systems being confusing or hard to use or whatever is when they require eyes away from the road time. Like I just recently drove our Volvo XC60 down to Washington, D.C. and back. And, it's infotainment system. You're doing a lot of swiping back and forth to get the different screens.
Right.
And that's, I know where the stuff is, but I'm still requiring me to do some swiping and some pressing and some all this, which requires my eyes over here when it should be over here. And that's the problem.
Well, and then one of the things that's accurate is that Honda has been moving away from kind of convoluted either two-screen systems or touch capacity. They're moving quickly into some really good, very decent, but good systems in the Hondas. Now all of a sudden Acura comes out and has totally blown it up and gone the Lexus route with remote controls and stuff like that. So yeah, it takes a lot of eye time off. It's a high learning curve. Sure, we even say that in a lot of cars. We say in BMWs, we say in Audis, it has a steep learning curve, but once mastered, it's pretty makes a lot of sense. But there's other ones like the Mercedes-Benz command system. It was baffling to begin with, and they've gone overboard making it baffling down the road. And we, like the person says, we drive 100 cars a year, certainly, but we drive a lot of Mercedes, and we own them for a long time. So 4 months, 5 months, 6 months later, it's still confusing.
Right.
It's not like we drove it for a day and said, oh, yeah, it's bad.
I mean, I agree with what you're saying, Mike, about the Volvo. The system is simply awful. I mean, we certainly can't be the only journalists out there.
It doesn't bother me as much.
That have issues with it.
It looks cool. That's the thing, is the system looks cool, and it's trying to be like your phone or your tablet. That's what it's trying to be like.
Think about what Ford did with my Ford Touch. They dumped it. They dropped it.
Yeah.
They said, it's just not working.
We didn't
Let's start over.
We didn't get it right.
And they started over, and now the Sync 3 system is really good.
Yeah.
So,
Cadillac has tried to improve Q. It's infinitesimally better, but it's still not great.
Right.
And each generation, there's a little bit of improvement, but it hasn't matched Uconnect from Fiat Chrysler, and it hasn't matched Sync 3. So.
Right. So we criticize systems sometimes. We do say they require a learning curve. It's not without substance. But again, the question is, how will the next generations of these troubled systems, evolve?
Well, one other thing is when they says about it's not something that normal consumers care about. You shouldn't have to force yourself into something convoluted to compensate for the system. It shouldn't be that this control's way down here and you have to reach down to get it, and everyone goes, well, I'll get it and I'll do that. No, we want something that's straightforward and, like Mike said, keeps your eyes on the road more than working around. Workarounds aren't great for
I really
driving.
think, the systems, quite often the systems that work the worst, if that's proper English, which I don't think it is, are the ones
Not that you have a master's in English.
are the ones that are the flashiest to look at.
Yeah.
And I think that's the problem. They try and, put all this pizzazz into these systems. And then when you look at like Hyundai, Kia, Uconnect, those systems aren't flashy at all.
Right.
But they work
They're
really
solid.
well.
Yeah, it went well in a conference room at some auto company that somebody.
They look cool.
Hey,
Some
no,
of those
you could
systems
do.
look really cool.
But it's not the same as regular day-to-day operation. Finally, we've got time for one more question about, wait for it, a 1991 Dodge Daytona. John, do us the honors.
I am looking to get a 1991 Dodge Daytona with about 120,000 miles on it. Since you don't have anything on your website about it, do you have any personal experience or reliability information on this car? I know Andrew liked this question, so I think he actually maybe owned one. I looked at one. I looked at an earlier Daytona. It was probably mid-'80s. It was a big car with not a lot of room, turbo engine, and I'm just glad I went away from that, because I also looked at other cars that had turbos back then. I looked at an Audi, and I think I looked at something else from Mazda, and I avoided any 80s turbos, problems.
But you looked at this car because it was cool looking, right? The Dodge Daytona, especially the Turbo Z.
Right.
I mean,
Mine was a Shelby.
It was kind of a cool looking car.
And pictured here are the 1990 and 1992 versions. Were just about identical to the 1991. That's the subject of the question. And you mentioned the Turbo Z. You could also get an IROC version
Yeah, there
of
was.
the Daytona.
International Race of
You
Champions.
could put it right next to your Camaro IROC.
Right.
Very 80s look, the hatchback,
Right.
kind of angular, a lot of glass area.
But so guess what me and Mike Quincy did yesterday? We actually were like, well, okay, we don't know how reliable this car was. We could have guessed. But we went back into our files and looked back at, Consumer Reports data on reliability of this car, and it was not good.
It was not good.
Yeah.
So 120,000 miles on the clock. I think if you're looking for a classic car, I think I'd
say
keep looking.
buy it for the nostalgia. Don't buy it for the driving.
Take it if it's free.
Yeah.
Free.
Yeah, if it's free, it's free, and you could save some money towards repairs. But yeah, it's
They were pretty.
it's had its time.
They were pretty lousy cars back then, and they're probably pretty lousy now. Sorry. Well, anyway, that's going to about do it for this episode of Talking Cars. As always, check the show notes for more information on the cars or the topics that we talked about. We really appreciate you tuning in. Thanks so much. We'll see you next week. I'm Mike Quincy.
I'm
Jen Stockburger. That's what you're supposed to say if you say the wrong
thinking.
name.
I hope Mike Monticello doesn't go, so I said Mike.